Now, India's first ever space-based mission, Aditya L1, is set to complete its 4-month-long space journey and move to its destination moments from now. Aditya L1 spacecraft received a command from ISRO, which is 15 lakh kilometers away, to go into a predefined orbit, thus beginning its insertion process. Now, launched on September 2nd on board a PSLV rocket, the craft has been on a long journey to a vantage point in space. Aditya L1 will neither land on the sun nor approach the celestial body. It will be placed in a unique vantage position known as the Lagrange Point 1. It is a location in space where the gravitational forces of two celestial bodies, the sun and the earth, are in equilibrium. Since its last firing a few months ago, the Aditya L1's liquid apogee motors have been placed in a hibernation mode owing to the chilly space environment. The motors will immediately fire for the predetermined amount of time and carry out the move precisely as instructed by ISRO. The mission probe would study coronal mass ejections, which is a period phenomenon that sees huge discharges of plasma and magnetic energy from the sun's atmosphere. Now, these bursts are so powerful, they can reach the Earth and potentially disrupt the operations of satellites. The mission also aims to shed light on the dynamics of several other solar phenomena by imaging and measuring particles in the sun's upper atmosphere. Now, this ambitious mission shows how India has been steadily matching the achievements of established spacefaring powers, all this at a fraction of their cost. Well, for more details, we are joined live by our senior correspondent, Siddharth MP. Siddharth, hi, you're lucky enough to be reporting on this momentous occasion. Could you tell us more about Aditya L1's insertion process and how much time is it likely to take?
Hello, Isha. So indeed, lucky for us all to be able to report on this historic occasion, because we were there also on the ground at Satish Dhawan Space Center on September 2nd as this mission majestically lifted off on board a PSLV rocket. And that too, the liftoff happened barely 10 days after India soft-landed Chandrayaan 3 on the moon. So Aditya as well comes at a very special time for the Indian Space Agency. So to start off with, the process has already begun. Let me take a very simple and special analogy for our viewers. Let's say that a vehicle is traveling on a highway at cruise control, right? It's traveling at high speeds on cruise control. So the driver essentially has to only steer the vehicle, right? Cruise control, the vehicle actually travels at a fixed speed. The driver has to only adjust the speed of the vehicle and steer it in the right direction. ISRO has to do something that's similar or comparable to that. So the craft is moving at a fixed and predetermined speed, as has been the case for all this while. But what ISRO will do is at a crucial moment, they will fire the engines to first reorient the craft and also ensure that it is slowed down. So once it is slowed down, it will actually get captured into that Lagrangian points orbit. So this is what ISRO does to, reach the lunar orbit. This is what ISRO has been doing to reach the Martian orbit. So typically all spacecrafts are going at a certain velocity. So at the right time, if you slow them down, they get captured by the nearest body, which has some amount of gravity. So this is actually a point between the Earth and the Sun, this Lagrangian point. It's named after the European mathematician Joseph Lagrange. So this is a very special point in space. It's at 1% distance between the Earth and the Sun. So the Earth and Sun are about 150 million kilometers away, but this craft is about 1.5 million kilometers away. There are many specialities of being in this particular point and studying the Sun. Firstly, if you're studying the Sun from the Earth, the biggest problem is there is a day and night cycle. So you can study the Sun for about 8 hours to 12 hours, depending on where you are. But when the night falls, you can't study the Sun. You have to go to a different part of the world. So to have, observatories around the world to study the Sun is impractical. And even if you do that, what happens is there's dust and there's a lot of clouds and distortion that affects your study. So the next best option is to study the Sun from space itself. So one of the options to study the Sun from space is the L1 point. Some of the specialities of L1 point, essentially, it's a point where one does not have to spend much energy to remain in. So there is a balance between Earth's gravitational pull and Sun's gravitational pull at L1 point, which means the craft is pretty much on cruise control. It is on its own. Every now and then one has to just steer it or give it a nudge to ensure that it is on the right path. Otherwise, the craft takes care of itself in that particular orbit. So that's the speciality of L1 point. And from L1, you have a constant 24/7 view of the sun and its phenomena, which means that you're not affected by day or night cycles. And you can study the sun 24/7, operate your sensors. There's at least 7 sensors on board Aditya L1. So each of these sensors with a purpose of its own. They can study the sun non-stop 24/7 over the next 5 or more years that this craft will live, Isha.
Right. Siddharth, you explained to us very eloquently this entire process. Do tell us how unique is this technology, and do you have some other similar projects in the works that India, or from your sources, if you know, any other country is trying to attempt at?
See, actually, this sun study mission is not something that is new. It's been going on since the 80s. The NASA has been attempting such missions, and the European Space Agency has also been attempting similar missions. They've been going on for a couple of decades. In fact, there's at least 3 to 4 spacecrafts that are around the L1 point. So, in fact, this L1 point itself is just one point. In fact, there are similarly 5 points in space between the Earth and Sun. So, at each of these points, there are spacecrafts that are placed. So there's at least a handful of crafts at these different points. What we have to remember is the uniqueness of Aditya L1. Number one, it is meant to study what is known as coronal mass ejections. You had pointed out some time back as well about coronal mass ejections. So what happens is the sun, outwardly, if you look at the sun, there are 3 layers. It's the photosphere and the light from the photosphere that reaches us on Earth. And that's what makes the sun appear so bright. So right outside that, there is the chromosphere. And the outermost layer of the sun is known as the corona. It's the same name as the virus, but that's just a coincidence. So it's the corona, which is the outermost layer of the sun. In corona, in fact, there's a lot of activity that happens. There's a lot of eruptions. You had pointed out very rightly that there are coronal mass ejections. So these eruptions happen from time to time. And these ejections are extremely high speed. They travel at almost 3,500 kilometers per second. So it's extremely fast, faster than anything known to mankind. So when they travel so fast, what happens is there's a 150 million kilometer distance between the Earth and the sun. So when they travel, what happens is it takes about 15 hours or 15 hours to reach from that particular point near the sun, and it takes that long to reach the Earth. So when it takes so long to reach the Earth, what happens is there can be severe danger to the satellites that are in Earth's orbit. To give you an example very specifically.
Right, Siddharth, we can go on talking about it for as long as we like to, but unfortunately with the paucity of time here on the broadcast, if you could just quickly tell us how big is this achievement for India's space program and how closely is the world watching? Like I said, we'd love to talk about this more with you, and we will continue to do so through the course of our broadcast. But for now, if you could just answer this for us.
Yeah, so this is indeed a momentous occasion for India because it's the first of its kind attempt by India. This is a type of mission that India has not attempted in terms of space missions. India has done the moon missions, in fact, 3 of them. India has done 1 Mars mission, that is to circle Mars from a very far distance. And now this is a sun mission. So, of course, it's being watched closely by the world because this is not a mission that affects civilians. So in Chandrayaan, there's a sort of a connect and patriotism for everyone involved. But this is not that kind of a mission because this is a niche mission that actually involves scientists and academia and particularly people who are, into astronomy. So it is those people that are interested in this mission. So it is that particular astronomy community and heliophysics community, the physics of the sun. It's those who study that are interested in this because the global science community operates like this. If I find something, I share it with everyone I know. And they also try to derive something they know from it. And there is a sort of collaboration. That is where this is important. You're sort of building a collaboration within the science community. And the more you coordinate and collaborate with other scientists, and the better your reputation is and better your findings are. So all agencies work like this. So ISRO will also be among the front runners in this field. And that's the core advantage. The Indian scientists, the Indian astronomers, they'll be able to derive a lot of value and share it with everyone else and vice versa.
Okay, thank you so much, Siddharth. You will be joining us again once the insertion process has taken place. And thank you once again for speaking so eloquently and explaining to us so well this entire process. We'll be back to you in a bit.